بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم الحكيم اللهم اجعل هذه محاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, today is the first day of Ramadan. We're going to try to pick up in our class how to avoid bankruptcy. Before we get into that, we got quite a few questions today about the moon sighting. The moon sighting. When is the moon sighted? How come in some places they're fasting, in other places they may not be fasting, etc. Is anyone familiar with that issue? Is anyone familiar with it? So the scholars of Islam have two positions as it relates to the moon sighting. What does that mean? Right now, we're in Philadelphia. Saudi Arabia spotted the moon yesterday. Then you have Philadelphia, you have Chicago, you have Texas, you have California, you have all other places around the world, even inside of America, right? So they have something called local sightings, and they have something called international sightings. Which sighting is the sighting that the Muslims in your area are supposed to go by? So in Islam, this is considered an issue that scholars differ on, even during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so we're going to mention briefly the difference of opinion in that. And the reason for that is so that if you're, let's say here in Philly, if a masjid says we're going with local sightings, we're not going to go with the international sightings, it's important for the Muslims not to look at them and say, hey, because there may be some Muslims that are not fasting today. Rather, to them, Ramadan may start tomorrow. That does not give you the authority to look at them and say, hey, they're not practicing Islam correctly, they're wrong, they're this, they're in opposition of the Sunnah, etc. Because this is a valid position in the Sharia. So the two positions are, one position is to go with the local sighting, and another position is to go with whatever sighting that you find. So the majority of the scholars of Islam, from them, Imam Abi Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmed, they take the position that if one person, Muslim around the world sees it, then everyone fasts. And this is due to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهُ فَصُومُوا وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهُ فَأَفْطِرُوا. Al-Hadith. This hadith, it means if you see the hilal, the moon, the crescent moon, then you fast. And when you see the crescent moon, you break your fast. They say that this hadith is general. It says, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهُ. Who is he talking to? He's talking to the Muslims. So if anyone from the Muslims see the hilal, the crescent moon, then it's for everyone to fast. And if anyone from the Muslims do not or see it again, then it's time to break your fast, meaning the entering of Ramadan and the exiting of Ramadan. That's the position of a large group of scholars. And this is why you find us, for example, here, we follow the sighting in Saudi Arabia only because, according to this hadith. And also, to be honest, it's easier for us because you get more time to prepare. I'm not saying it's right and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that's just what we do. If you find another masjid doing something to the contrary, for example, they said, no, we're going to base it on our local sighting. They have evidence to support that. There's evidence in Islam to support that. And we're going to mention some of that right now. The scholars of Islam, or the sun, whether the moon, it says اختلاف المطالع. Ikhtilaf al-matali', it means that the sun rises and sets in different locations around the world. In some places you may see the moon, in other places you may not see the moon. So there's a hadith, and the position, in all honesty, the position of the local sighting is probably the majority position. It's probably the majority position of many of the scholars as it relates to that. And the reason for that is due to the hadith that you can find in Sahih Muslim, an Qurayb qala qaddamtu Sham. So understand what's going on here in this hadith. One of the companions, he said, I went to Sham. I visited Sham. Sham could have been Syria during that time, in that region. He says, qaddamtu Sham wastahalla alayya hilal Ramadan. And he said that while we were in Sham, we saw the moon. Wa ana bisham. He said we saw the moon laylatul Jum'ah. Now pay attention. He said we saw the moon laylatul Jum'ah, the night of Jum'ah. Does that mean they prayed Jum'ah prayer and they waited that night and saw the moon? Or did that mean it was Thursday night and they saw the moon? Which is it? Is it Thursday night or Friday night? I'm talking about as far as we understand, the way we understand stuff. It was Thursday night, Mumtaz. So Thursday night represents Laylatul Jum'ah, meaning the night of Jum'ah. So they said, Fara'aytul Hilal Laylatul Jum'ah. He said, we saw the moon on the night of Jum'ah, which was Thursday night. ثم قدمنا المدينة في آخر الشهر. And he says, so we went to Medina at the end of the month. Medina is the city of the Prophet ﷺ. فَسَأَلَنِي Ibn Abbas. So Ibn Abbas, he asked me, what's going on? ثُمَّ ذَكَرَ الْهِلَالِ. And then he mentioned the hilal, about when they saw the hilal. فَقَالَ مَتَى رَأَيْتُمَ الْهِلَالِ. So Ibn Abbas, he said, when did you see the hilal? Now mind you, where's he at right now? Everyone's asleep. He's in Medina. Where did he go in the beginning? Shams, which could be considered Syria today. So he went to Syria. They saw the moon on Thursday night, which is the night of Jum'ah. Then towards the end of Ramadan, he went where? He went to Medina. When he got to Medina, he ran into Ibn Abbas. He told Ibn Abbas, or they told him, asked him, when did you see the moon? Ibn Abbas said, when did you see the moon? He said, Ra'ina Laylatul Jum'ah. He said, we saw the moon on the night of Jum'ah, which would have been Thursday night. فَقَالَ أَنْتَ رَأَيْتُهُ. And he said, so you saying you saw it? فَقُلْتُ نَعْمْ. Ibn Abbas said to him, y'all saw the moon on Thursday night? He said, yes. He says, وَرَآهُ النَّاسِ وَصَامُوا مُعَاوِيَةَ. He said, we saw the moon and the people fasted. And so did Muawiyah, who was the leader during that time. He also fasted as well. And then he says, وَلَكِنَّ رَأَيْنَا لَيْلَةَ السَّبْتِ فَلَا نَزَالُ نُصُومُ حَتَّى نُكْمِلَ ثَلَاثِينَ. And then Ibn Abbas said, we saw it Friday night, meaning Saturday night, meaning the next day. So pay attention. Qurayb, he said that we saw it on Friday night, which would have been Thursday night. Why? Because in Islam, the night comes before the day. The night comes before the day. So at Maghrib, it will be the night for the next day. So for example, Thursday night is really Friday night in Islam, meaning the night comes before the day. They said, no, we saw it the next day. So the scholars of Al-Islam, they say that when you look at this hadith shows that they were pretty much in the same region, more or less, a few hours apart, and Sham and in Medina. In both of these places, the moon one place they saw the moon, the other place they didn't see the moon. So the scholars say they use the same hadith. If you see the moon, then you fast, and if you see the moon, you break your fast. They say that this is particular to each locale, obviously each city. So for example, and the reason why we're mentioning this is because there are Muslims that may not go with the international sighting. They may decide to go with the local sighting. Is there something wrong for them for doing that? No. There's nothing wrong with going with the local sighting. It's permissible to go with the local sighting, and in rather some cases it may be preferable to go with the local sighting. However, what we are accustomed to here in our location is going with the international sighting, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So if the Muslims decide to go here, la bats, there's no problem. If you go there, then there's no problem. The issue is, brothers will say, well, if you go with the local sighting and it's different, and they fast overseas first, then you're going to be fasting the extra day, or you might be fasting a lesser day. Then that's the choice you make. That's the choice you make. Meaning, if you want to go with the international sighting, then you go with the international sighting. If you want to go with the local sighting, you go with the local sighting. At any event, you have evidence to support either way. You have evidence to support either way. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Any questions? Fadl. Sister got a question? What was the question? I can't hear. Mumtaz, good question. So she said, well, if one day says that we're fasting a day and everybody else is fasting the day after, would that then mean two different Eids? Yes. It would mean that one place is celebrating the Eid on this day and another place is celebrating the Eid on that day. Tayyib, question, is that even permissible? In this case, yes. Based on what? Based on what they saw from the moon. One group saw the moon. The other group said, no, we're waiting our local sighting and we didn't see the moon. The problem is, well, it's all good if they saw it overseas and we saw it here, then there's no problem. That is no problem. So then where's the real issue coming at? One of the reasons why we go with the international sighting, and this is just to be clear, first of all, it's easier for us. That's number one. But number two, one of the benefits of going with the international sighting is when it's time to prepare for Hajj. See, if you're gonna stick with local sightings, perhaps Hajj might start a day earlier based on you going with your local sighting as opposed to going with international. Well, it's only one Hajj. It's only one Yom Arafah, right? You can't, if you say, okay, well, we're doing Arafah today. All the Muslims are Arafah today. You say, no, I'm doing Arafah the next day because I saw the moon a different day. Well, you might not be able to stand on Arafah that day. They might shut it down. Do you understand? So whoever made Hajj will understand. If you didn't make Hajj, then that may not make sense to you. But for those of you that has made Hajj, then it should make sense, because on Yom Arafah, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Al-Hajj Arafah. He said, the most significant day of Hajj is Yom Arafah. So if the most significant day of Hajj is Yom Arafah, that means the people that live in that particular place is going to say, okay, to us, this is the day. Now you might come along and say, no, according to me, no, it's not that day, it's the day after. That's going to be a problem, because maybe for whatever reason, security, etc., it may not allow you to stand on Arafah that day. Then that means you would have missed your Hajj. And if you missed your Hajj and you made your niyyah to go into Hajj and you have ihram on, then there's all types of penalties that go with that. It's not just a black and white thing. So these issues are rather quite detailed. Right. So then, in essence, when we speak about the differences of opinion and the difference of opinion as it relates to when you spot the moon, when you see the moon, then the scholars do differ on it. But it is a permissible differing. Rather, it's a differing that went back to the times of the companions, radiallahu ta'ala anhum. And it's not for us today to bicker with our brothers and sisters in Islam about which days did you see the moon or did you not see the moon. Now, if anybody want to be from those people who are trained to look for the moon, then that's one thing, right? And that's that. We're actually supposed to get into the book tonight, but I don't think we have enough time. Or do we? When do we break our fast? 7:04? 7:02? طيب, we'll mention. I'll tell you 1 second. All right. Levels. Right. We're going to continue. Right. Salam rahmatullah. 1 second. This is a class that we started months ago. It was called How to Avoid from Being Bankrupt. And being bankrupt here is not talking about fiscal money here in the dunya. Rather, it's talking about being bankrupt in the next life. So we're going to mention a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ quickly, and then we'll continue later. And Nabi ﷺ, he said, "Man salaka tariqan." Now, this is one way to multiply your wealth for the next life. He says, "Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilman sahalallahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah." And Nabi ﷺ, he said, whoever treads a path seeking knowledge, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make his pathway to paradise easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make his pathway to paradise easy. What does that look like? Treading a path for knowledge. What does that even mean? Huh? Learning your deen. What does learning your deen look like? And learning your deen, learning your religion may look different to everybody. But the things that are very important for all of us to know is who our Lord is. Can you worship a Lord that you don't know? Is that possible? So the question is, how do we learn who Allah is? How do we learn who Allah is? Yes. Read the Quran, Mumtaz. So you get to know who your Lord is by reading the Quran. What is the Quran going to tell us about Allah? What is the Quran going to tell us about Allah? Everything. The Quran is going to tell us who Allah is, what we're supposed to do, what Allah is capable of. We're also going to learn about stories of nations and people that came before us. And I'm going to stop in a couple minutes. And just when we think about that, if everyone were to look at themselves, right? You think about your own existence in this dunya. All of us were only alive for a certain time period. We're only alive in this dunya for a certain time period. Once that time period is over, there may be a whole nother group of people that come after you. You have to ask yourself, what was your life even worth then? What was your life even worth? Some of us, when we pass away, it'll be like we never even existed. Most of us will be forgotten in a year or two. And that may be far. Some of us may be forgotten after a day or two. But while we're here in this dunya, what did we do? What value did we add to someone else's life? What value did you add to your own life as it relates to your, is that me? As it relates to you and your own worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What value did it bring you as a Muslim? So when we think about those things, right, as Muslims, when we think about those things, we have to ask ourselves, what type of legacy do we plan on leaving when we're dead and gone? What type of legacy? And this is a real question. When you die, will somebody make dua for you? We don't know. But depending on the legacy that you left, especially if you're a parent and you have children, which brings us to the next hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he says, إِذَا مَاتَ عَبْدُ انقطع عنه عمله إلا من ثلاث. And Nabi ﷺ, he said that when a slave dies, all of his actions are cut off except for three. إلا ثلاث. Now, the actions that are not cut off are things that are going to remain, meaning those actions will still be there, even when you pass away. And this is one of the main reasons how we avoid going bankrupt, is this hadith right here. An-Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam said, when we die, this is part of the legacy that we're talking about. When you die, there's three things that can aid you. From them, sadaqatan jariyah, a continuous charity. What is a continuous charity? Like a chair that someone sits on? Someone, okay, but you said a chair. Mumkin. So donating a chair to the masjid, for example. Okay, donating a chair to the masjid so people can sit that can't sit there. Yes, what else? Gifting somebody the Quran. But here's the thing though, think about this. The scholars of the past, when they thought about sadaqatul jariyah, if you leave a chair in the masjid, right, chances are that chair is going to break in a couple years. So what's going to happen to the chair? It's going to be thrown in the trash eventually, right? What else? No, what did he say? A mushaf. Eventually, a mushaf, it may lose the pages and fall apart. So then that you pass away, that's going to last, and then it may fade away. So then, what type of charity can still be going hundreds and hundreds of years once you're gone? We didn't get there yet. We're talking about sadaqatul jariyah. What else? What type of continuous charity can we give? Yes. Hold that thought, because it's almost time. I want to mention the next parts of the hadith. If a person has knowledge and the people benefit from them when they pass away, let's look at, for example, Imam Abi Hanifa. Does anyone know when he died? The 2nd or 3rd century. Imam Malik, Imam Ahmed. They died over 1,000 years ago. We're not even talking about their companions. We're talking about people that came after them. Scholars of Islam, we still remember their names today. Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim. We still benefit. Is there not a Muslim that doesn't read Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim? Their books are still present to this day, and people read the books that they compiled a hadith. This is an example. This is their legacy. They're still collecting, they're still cashing checks. Every time you read a hadith from Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, they still cashing checks. Right? And the next one, the last one, waladun salih yad'u lah, a righteous child that makes dua for you. Now, let's say, for example, you don't got no money, right? Let's say, for example, you can't give a charity like, build a masjid or something like that. But you're a good Muslim, and you took the time to instill Islam in your children. You took the time to instill Islamic etiquettes, mannerisms, how to speak to people, how not to speak to people, how to be dutiful to your parents, etc. You taught your children that. So when you're dead and gone, your children pick up your legacy. It's almost time. طيب. خلاص. We'll stop with there, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر.